my childhood dreams were to travel to Paris, live in New York City, and travel to West Africa, which I completely connect back to that experience in my dance classes. And so my first international trip was my senior year of college. I was on an academic full ride in university. And so I took out a loan to go on a trip with the fashion merchandising department. And we did a week in Paris and a week in London. And when I finally accomplished my first childhood dream of going to Paris, but if Paris is this great, I've got to go see the rest of the world. And that just sparked me from there to just to travel.
Welcome to Distinctly You, where we talk to women who have redefined success at different seasons of change. Today, we'll be talking to Meisha Lerato, a multifaceted entrepreneur whose life is fueled by curiosity about other cultures. And this has resulted in Meisha traveling to over 50 countries around the world. What drives her adventurous spirit? Well, let's get into the conversation. All right. Well, Meisha, I have to start off by welcoming you to Distinctly You. Thank you so much for taking time out of your schedule, girl. We've been trying to make this conversation happen for a minute, and we're here.
We made it. Yes, all is well. All is well. So thank you so much for having me. I'm excited to be here with you. And congratulations on the success of your show.
Thank you so much. And I have to say that, Meisha, you have been one of those people in my life that has really cheered me on the sidelines to really pursue this avenue. It's something I've been talking about, and you have been one of those people that's been like, no more excuses, girl, do it. So I want to salute you and thank you for being the friend that you have been to me.
Oh, thank you. But I'm just proud of you and everything you've done. So I'm like, this is just another opportunity for you to touch lives and share your spirit. So I'm excited.
Thank you so much, Meisha. One of the ways that you express who you are is you refer to yourself as a multifaceted soulpreneur, and soul spelled SOUL. Can you tell us a little bit about what you mean by that?
Yeah, that felt good in my spirit when I heard you say it. Like I had to reflect and like, yeah, that's you, girl. Let's pat yourself on the back. But a soulpreneur to me is somebody that creates from their soul, and what they're bringing forth and creating in this world also has spiritual or soulful impact. So I think there's one thing to create a business that generates revenue. I think there's another thing to create a business or organization that impacts souls, and that you're also gifting to the world through your soul.
Wow. I love that. I love that a lot. And, whenever you introduce yourself, one of the things that I also have noticed is how you express who you are, especially by the definition of your name, Meisha. Can you share for our audience, like who Meisha is and what your name represents to you in terms of how you live out your life?
Yeah. So my name is Meisha. That's the name my parents gave me, which means she who lives. And then I also, a few years ago, added to my name Lerato. And Lerato is love in Setswana. So she who lives love is my North Star, my guiding light. And so every time I have a nonprofit, I Am, We Are. And one of the things that we teach the young people is that anything that comes after I am is a declaration, an affirmation, or a negation over your life and who you are. So for me, and naming myself, every time I speak and say my name, and every time someone calls me by my name, it is also a declaration or a negation. So I chose for myself to be Meisha Lerato, because she who lives love. Then that is an affirmation, a reminder, and a confirmation for me on what my purpose is, how I should be showing up for the world. And also maybe even during a day can be some self-correction. So Audre Lorde, and I'm paraphrasing, said, if you don't define yourself for yourself, you'll be crushed in other people's definition. And that naming of myself in that way was an opportunity for me to also define for the world who I am and what I declare I'm doing.
Whew. That's so powerful, Meisha. And one thing I will say too is I also believe in the power of the name because we are called by who we are constantly. Every time someone says our name, they are literally prophesying into our lives the meaning of our name. And so that's why my name, Sherifah, actually means a woman of noble descent. So it means that anytime you call me, you are calling and speaking the highest essence of who I am as a woman of upstanding character, nobility. And so I shouldn't have to cower down and be anything less than who I am. So yes, I receive what you just said, and it's really powerful. So to everyone out there, look into what the meaning of your name is. You know, it's really powerful. And when you're naming your children, put a
Yeah.
lot of prayer and thought into that, right?
Yeah. And on all of
Yes.
that. And it
Yes.
don't really change it. Like you have the ability and the choice to define who you are in the world. So do so.
Absolutely. Meisha, you are someone who is a free spirit and you live a life of adventure. And you've traveled. I mean, we're talking at least 50 countries and counting.
Yeah.
And that's not an easy task. Now, talk to us a little bit about where this adventurous spirit came from. And is it in your background? Is it a part of your being? Like, it's not everyone that travels like that. So just share with us a little bit about where that travel bug came from and how you've become who you are in light of traveling the world.
Oh, I'm appreciating your questions. They're juicy and delicious and they're making me think. And hitting me at such a different level. So I would say it's a combination of that that balance of nature and nurture. I think by nature, I am naturally an explorer. I'm naturally curious. I'm naturally sort of a problem solver. And so that is who I am innately am. But I also had a mother who we were constantly in the car driving everywhere. So, my mother's from New Jersey, but I was raised in Washington, D.C. So we were up and down the highway a lot. And, we vacationed, not vacation like in our car to go like, Pennsylvania, places like that. So we definitely got out of our home a fair amount. And then I was raised in the suburbs of Washington, D.C., but we did everything in D.C. My mother thought it was important from a cultural perspective to have that balance. And so I grew up in a primarily white area, and she would take us into D.C. so we could have more cultural diversity. And so I was taking dance classes at Dance Place in Northeast D.C. And I took tap dance classes from a man who was French, and we used to perform at the French embassy a lot. And then I was also taking African dance classes from South African and Guinean from Guinea, West Africa, instructors. And I think just being in that community where language and culture and food and all of those things, it just sparked this interest in me. And so I remember at some point, like my walls switching from like teeny bopper posters of, whatever pop stars were popular at the moment to having pictures of literally the French countryside. And so my childhood dreams were to travel to Paris, live in New York City, and travel to West Africa, which I completely connect back to that experience in my dance classes. And so my first international trip was my senior year of college, my only student loan that I took out. I was on an academic full ride in university. And so I took out a loan to go on a trip with the fashion merchandising department. And we did a week in Paris and a week in London. And when I finally accomplished my first childhood dream of going to Paris, I was like, if Paris is this great, London was all right, honestly. But if Paris is this great, I've got to go see the rest of the world. And that just sparked me from there to just to travel.
Wow, I love that. I love the fact that something that started in your childhood is what you're living out now. And so, I was going to ask a question later on, but I think it's a really good segue in terms of the defining moment for you in terms of, okay, this traveling thing there's more to it than that, and I want more of this. It seems to be that initial trip to Paris, right? It's sounding like that, you started in your childhood. Hey, I want to go to Paris, stemming from the dance class. You finally did it. And it was, can I assume, all that you thought it was going to be and maybe even more?
Oh my gosh, Paris is still my first love. Like it's not and I think this is just life. It's not a perfect city. It's not a clean city. It's got a lot of stuff, but it is still like charmant, as they say in French. It is the most beautiful, wonderful place in the world to me still to this day. But I have to also as well, after I finished my undergraduate experience, I moved to Atlanta. So I think also if there's anything else, like there's one thing to have a dream and to have an idea, but there's another thing to pursue it. And so to get to that, like I've been to 50 plus countries, part of it was about that challenging myself to then get on this path. Cause it's like, it's one thing to go on a trip, an organized trip with somebody. It's another thing to like solo travel, for instance, or drive from DC to Mexico. But I think I constantly always challenged myself. So I wanted to do the Peace Corps after undergrad. And as a way to like accomplish that other dream of living in West Africa, work on my French. And I also recognized for myself, I had never lived out of like the DC area. So I took a job and had the fortunate opportunity of having this job opportunity after undergrad to live in Atlanta for a year. And that was my test of could I survive on my own? So I knew what I wanted even at that young age. I said, okay, well, can you do it? And let's figure out if you can do it and start cultivating those skills. So I lived down in Atlanta for a year, applied to the Peace Corps. And really, and like in learning how to travel, it's one thing to say you want to do it. Peace Corps gave me the courage to be like, drop me off anywhere in the world. I'm going to be okay and I'm going to thrive. I don't care what kind of community is, I will be okay. So that ability to have that courage, to feel secure, to feel safe, to know how to navigate the world, Peace Corps really cultivated those skills in me. So Paris planted the seed, Peace
Yeah.
Corps
I apologize. You said Paris planted the seed and Peace Corps
nurtured it.
nurtured it. Wow. I love that. And in terms of, you said the Peace Corps also helped you fulfill that second part of your childhood dream, which was going to West Africa.
Yes, yes. So
How was West Africa?
oh my gosh. I love the continent in general, the continent of Africa. So living in West Africa at like 22 years old on my own is like a dream come true in so many ways. So Benin, but let me also just say it was hard. So I definitely got there and was like, what the heck did I get myself into? Like the first time using like a latrine, I was like, OMG, the first time like the bugs, like the big, huge cockroaches, something on my leg, the geckos, the all of it, not speaking the language. Like I didn't speak French when I first got there, like enough to be able to like really live. Um, it was daunting. It was intimidating. It was scary. It was overwhelming, all of the things. And it didn't go away after like a week or two. That was a 2-year experience of all the emotions. And, they say kind of Peace Corps is this emotional roller coaster. And you're having to constantly every day, I'm going to get out of my bed. I'm going to brave my community. I'm going to be here and look different than every single person, sound different than every single person, and be secure in myself and be okay and confident and go out here in the world and make mistakes, all sorts of mistakes. So, it was a wonderful experience and just really like, I always say Peace Corps is like, it's like you have this safety net that is like your home. And all of a sudden it just being like, when the magician pulls the tablecloth and like the plates are still sitting there, that's what it's like. And it's like, well, can you survive now? Like it's just you. All your safety nets are gone, your friends, your family, all those things that, those identity markers that are so that keep us secure, even like your clothes that say who you are in society, your car, your education, whatever it is that usually gives you that definition of who you are. In a lot of ways, it's gone. And the only thing that really shapes who you are is your character, your soul, your core. And it's like, and now let's see who you are in the world. And so I think for me, Peace Corps was a core experience in shaping who I am, teaching me, um, teaching me on how to really connect soul to soul, heart to heart with people, and the importance of that, how to relate, how to fail and fail beautifully and fail forward and get up again and again and again and again, because it was a constant failure, whether it was just small things of speaking French or big things of like, I got a computer donated and didn't put it into a converter and it like literally exploded, like literally. And you're like, oh my gosh, I told the school for months I was going to give them a computer and then it just literally caught on fire. So like those things happen and it's like, and now what are you going to do?
As a busy woman always on the move, I've discovered the perfect formula for relaxation and reflection: Cornelia Holmes' non-toxic candles and scents. Personally, I like to light up a candle, grab a cup of tea, and relax. Before I read a book or study the Word of God, I set the tone by spraying a light mist of the serenity scent in the room. It's amazing how the right fragrance can create the perfect ambiance for reflection. Cornelia Home is offering all of you, my amazing viewers, a special 15% discount on all their products. Just click the link in the description below and use coupon code DPU15 at checkout. Enjoy.
And so I love West Africa. I got to travel to, all across West Africa from Benin to Senegal while I was there. But I think for me, those were formative years in like really peeling back the onion and helping me to figure out who I am and who I want to be in this world. And not that I figured, I left those 2 years and I had it all defined, but it definitely got me on the pathway to like figuring out some things and also like unraveling like this is not who I am and this is not who I want to be.
Wow. I really have to say, I really appreciate what you just shared about the Peace Corps. And it just reminds me, because I even have kids close to that age right now, where I think as young people, when you want to discover who you are and thinking right after high school, you know who you are or what you want to be. And that's not accurate. It's definitely a lifelong thing. And to have that type of opportunity to explore the world and find out versions of yourself of who you are, I think it's truly a gift. And I wonder, did that birth part of what you do now as a nonprofit founder? Because you did mention, and that's one of the ways we connected, both as nonprofit founders. I know with I Am We Are and the work you do there with the children in South Africa. Do you trace it back to your time at the Peace Corps, you think, or was that later on?
Definitely. I think definitely. I honestly, and I was, I literally on Friday that just passed or a few days ago, I hosted a reception at the South African Embassy for my nonprofit. And the first people that I shouted out was Peace Corps. And the room had returned Peace Corps volunteers in there, people that had served with me in Benin. I did 2 services, people that served with me in South Africa, people that I had met along the way that served in Peace Corps. We had a Peace Corps country director in there, and even like one of the Shrivers was in there as well too. And so like, did Peace Corps help shape who I am in terms of my nonprofit? Yes. But did Peace Corps help shape me in terms of who I am in almost every facet of my life? Yes. The most formative, the most powerful, the most transformative, the most illuminative, is that a word? Illuminating, experience that I had. I am so grateful, it is not a perfect institution. And there are a lot of flaws, and a lot of your experience is shaped on who you are and how you want to show up in that experience and how you will utilize it. But I am so grateful to have had the opportunity for 2 years to live in another country, immersed at a very local level in a community, to be able to learn a language, to be able to learn from others, in that way. It is the only experience like that in the world. And I'm so grateful that the US government has set that up. And again, to the Shrivers, to John F. Kennedy for creating that institution. But I'm also thankful, just as we're talking about Peace Corps, to all the countries and the communities that allow us to come in, these very naive, very bright-eyed, bushy-tailed, idealistic volunteers that want to save the world. We really quickly realize that we can't actually do that and don't have that power. But thank you so much to all those communities, the everyday people, the ladies selling fruit, to, the children that run with us and play with us and welcome us in. Thank you to those communities and those individuals that continuously accept Peace Corps volunteers. Even in our fallacies and our flaws, they continue to accept us and receive us for the gifts that we do bring as well.
Wow. Is there any story that may come to mind, or any experience during your time, whether it was at the Peace Corps or any of your other travels, that you think has really impacted or shaped the version of who you are today?
Oh, yes. Yes. Okay. This is a two-parter, but oh my gosh. And I do not remember this woman's name, but I can see her and I can feel her energy. This is 20 years ago we're talking about. I can't believe that. But oh wow. So I remember her sitting in my house. And it was a lady that, and I have to try not to cry. Oh man, I've never cried when I share this experience, but the way you asked it, it just touched me so much. Thank you for asking the questions in the way you did, and the insightful questions that you did. I was a business volunteer, and I was teaching classes, basic marketing, accounting classes at a credit union, because they were having an issue with loans being defaulted on. And so the thought was, if we teach better business practices and management of those loans, then they would have a higher return rate of the loans. And so most of the people that I'd had in my classes to that date were like, I have pharmacists and these very educated men. And again, I am teaching these classes in French. I am a recent college graduate. In some regards, I'm teaching this pharmacist, things. And my French is very basic. But there was one lady that came into this class, again, 20 years ago, very small village, West Africa, very traditional patriarchal culture. And so there was one woman in all these classes early on, that when I was teaching it, and this is in my early months at Peace Corps, and she wasn't really getting it. And she came to my house, and I was trying to teach her one-on-one some of the stuff, and she still wasn't getting it. And I was getting so frustrated. And I did not understand, I'm breaking it down to the smallest level, why she didn't get it. And I don't remember exactly what it was in that exchange, but all of a sudden it hit me. She didn't really speak French. Her French wasn't that great. And so it was less an issue of what I was saying in some regards, but it was sort of, one, French isn't my native language. French isn't her native language, but it was something being lost in the translation. And sort of the just based on sort of our education levels and how we're communicating in this language that was neither of ours native language. And so that right there was a very pivotal lesson to me, and sort of I was so frustrated, so very frustrated, but just being able to look at things from a different perspective to really understand. And yes, you can keep nailing something, because that's all I kept doing. I kept nailing and hitting harder and harder and harder. And but why don't you get it? I never changed how I was doing it. I just kept hitting that one nail on the head. And so she first taught me this lesson of just to be patient, go slow, seek to understand instead of being understood. go try different perspectives. Now I know things like people have different learning styles, so visual, oral, all of those kind of things, but don't keep hammering that nail. Like, you're not going to be successful. So the same woman who I'm now learning about, like, her education, but she, to me, and I think there's also something about the visual. She was very polished and look good. And she's in these classes, and like, just because you look one way, there's a whole nother story underneath. And so that part right there opens me up to the next thing she taught me, because what I learned was that she lived in a village that was like 45-minute motorcycle ride away from where I was. And so I was kind of in the regional capitals, more developed than where she lived. And she was like in like, literal like mud houses. I don't want to say huts, but mud structured housing, in a very rural area. And so what she asked me to do was to come out to her community and teach classes. So I did that, and I taught classes, and we had a translator this time because we learned a little bit. And I taught these classes to the cooperative that she worked with. It was a farming cooperative. And so after I taught the classes, again, I'm just very idealistic. I'm like, all right, well, let's do something. So, because they did they took the cassava and they manufactured this thing called gari. And so in my little Peace Corps kit, they had this idea of like, well, differentiation, a marketing concept of differentiation. So everybody traditionally in those old school markets, they're all sitting in the market selling the exact same thing. There's no differentiation. The price is the same, et cetera. And you're just haggling. And so I'm like, well, why don't you color it and put some like red oil with it? Or why don't you, you eat gari with peanuts and water. Why don't you mix the peanuts with the gari and put it in little plastic bags so you're selling the end product and you'll differentiate? And they laughed at me, first and foremost. They laughed at me. I actually think some of those ideas could work. But hey, they laughed at me and was like, why would you do that? And that's lazy. And that's that kind of thing. So I felt silly. But even in my Peace Corps kit should feel silly too. But then in addition to that, they go, let's take you on a trip. And I'm like, okay. So I remember vividly what I had on that day. I had on khakis and a red sleeveless tank top. And I had on some like Tiva kind of sandals. I don't know why. And I had this purple plastic knit bag. I don't know why, but I vividly remember this day. And they walked me around. It's hot. I'm like, we're on the equator. It's so, so hot. And I'm like, where are they taking me? Why are we going? And take me on this long journey. And we're walking around. And we finally like get to like where they're like, this is where we grow our crops. And I'm like, again, and all my young whateverness. Okay, so why you got me out here, right? So, and I'm like, I vividly remember standing underneath like a corn stalk or something, and there's like an ant falling on me, and I'm like, what do you got me out here doing? And it's hot, and I'm sweaty, and I'm like, okay. And they're like, okay, now we're gonna show you something else, and they take me on another long walk, and they're like, this is where we get water, and I'm like, oh. Well, at first I'm like, okay, but then I start thinking about it, and then they kind of leave me to like take it all in, and they're like, what we really need is water. Like, thank you for teaching us all that stuff, but what we really need is water that's closer to where we get crops, because they were telling me like they're carrying, it's not a lot of water, and they're carrying this water like on their heads this far distance to get to these crops to water them, and so they would do better and be more successful if they actually had better access to water. So another lesson learned, like, yeah, you got some bright ideas, but you may be bringing them forth, but they're not really solving the real problem, because you, from your external perspective, are thinking this is what they need and they don't. So I ended up working with them, and what I realized, such a small thing. One was a foreigner, and there was an organization in my community that was German run that provided wells. I knew the guy. I had met him a couple of times because we're both foreigners in this community. So that one, just the fact that I'm American kind of helps a little bit. And then secondarily, and that's the reality. It's an ugly reality, but it's a reality. But secondarily, nobody spoke French except for that woman. That woman was the best French speaker in that village. So they couldn't fill out the application to actually even apply for water because it was in French. So I filled out the application for them. I went with them to the ONG to actually submit the paperwork. I like was the main person and communicated what they needed, and I navigated. And I honestly feel like because the guy knew me, he trusted me. And so often, some of these projects, they kind of, there's some mistrust there, because projects have, I don't even know how to say it in English, but, some corruption, some stuff happens. So they actually they got the water in like half the time that it usually takes. Um, I went back years later, like 10 years later, and I saw the well. And it just brought so much joy to my heart to see that water in that community. And it was like, out of all the things I did in Peace Corps that I thought was just all that well-intentioned stuff, the thing that really I always remember is that I helped that village get water. And I didn't do by any big feat, but simply because I helped fill out an application. And also I took the time to listen and I took the time to see and I took the time to learn what the real issue and the real challenge was. And I helped them based on what they needed and what they desired and not based on what I thought and the US government and this credit union thought they needed. And one of the things that I will always I'll hold dear for the rest of my life. The woman, and I can't remember her name. I'm so upset. I can't remember her name in this moment, but she named her daughter after me. So she had a daughter later on and she put my name as one of the second or third names. So there's a little girl somewhere in that village that,
Oh, Meisha.
yeah,
Oh,
the Misha, a little Misha somewhere. So yeah, I don't know. There's lots of lessons from that, but that is one of the most pivotal experiences I had in Peace Corps and in my life.
wow. That almost brings tears to my eyes, Meisha. That is a beautiful story. That is a lot of lessons there. And that is definitely something that, wow. I mean, I don't know that you can top that story in that sense and in that way, but it really does point to the fact that when we are trying to accomplish things, sometimes it's just the smallest things. Sometimes we overcomplicate what we feel is going to be great, but just like you said, filling out an application, but taking the time to listen and seeing what people really need as opposed to here's our bright idea, just how far that goes. So thank you for sharing that. So many lessons with that, Meisha.
Yeah.
Wow.
Even as I sit now and reflect on that and sort of the work I do now, sometimes with my nonprofit, because we have these grandiose ideas and it needs to be this. And I definitely, when I first started my nonprofit, I was you know, I used to be it's only 20 kids and it's only this and it's only this. And to your point earlier, I was making small my efforts. But what I realized, and what keeps me going back is that a hug matters. Those small things matter. A hug matters. And I love you matters. And I see you matters. Keep showing up matters. And answering a WhatsApp call from those kids matters. And so it is the culmination of the small things that do matter. And it does not have to be, I know USAID and all these other people on these grant applications want me to say all these grandiose things of that impact. But for me, in the way what I'm doing through I Am We Are, it is more about those intangibles that I'll never be able to count, that I really do feel are making the impact on those kids more so than I provided this number of jobs and I had this many computer trainings and all of that, because it is those heart to heart. It is the listening. It is the seeing. It is the hearing. It is the hugs, that heart to heart human connection that I think matters more than anything. And that's what Peace Corps has taught me.
Wow. Golly. Seriously speaking, just based on everything I mean, I've heard about the Peace Corps and I know the amazing things people have done with the Peace Corps, but just hearing your personal experience and the impact it has had on you and on communities and now on, a lot of the kids that you serve in South Africa and beyond. It's just monumental. I thank you so much, Meisha, for just who you are. You truly are a light, and I really adore you. I will, I will say, though, Meisha, with everything that you've done in your journey right now, I mean, you are one person that I never know where you are. You could be, I could be talking to you and then you're like, give me a second. They just took light here. Let me plug this thing in and okay, I'm back. That's Meisha, right? So where in the world are you right now, Meisha?
I am in bliss first and foremost. I am in joy. I am in peace and I am grounded. And
I love
I'm
it.
sitting physically though in Merida, Mexico, which is in the Yucatan Peninsula. It's about a 4-hour drive to like Cancun.
That's amazing. And do you mind my asking where in your journey right now in this season that you find yourself that it's brought you to Mexico?
I think just how I started in that grounding, that bliss, I think I hit for all the nonprofit founders, take care of yourself, take care of yourself. Like the passion, the love, the joy, and that, like, I got to get it done. It's yes, all good. The needs, there's so many needs. And someone once told me in South Africa, they're like, in the sea of need, pick a lane and swim it hard, otherwise you're drowned. But I think there needs to be something added to that, but also swim it at a pace, like at a steady pace, because you'll drown otherwise too. Like I'm gonna add that piece on it. And I definitely hit a wall and was burnt out. And, because my nonprofit is small and like we don't have a big budget. And a lot of what I don't get paid, have not gotten paid. Like I have some paid staff people that's varied year over year, but I'm doing the curriculum development stuff, to the implementing it, to the back of the house, to the board management myself with support. So I have people along the way that are helping me and I'm pulling in resources, but I'm really doing all of it plus keeping a job, right? I think those are the things when people look at my Instagram and they're like, oh, you're in all these sexy places, getting on all these planes. Look at you with the kids. Oh my gosh, you're saving the world. Like you're making like, and sorry, I don't mean that to sound whatever, but sometimes like, I guess when I hear it, like that is great and that's good. And I love that people perceive me that way. And I hope I can live up to that perception. But I also don't think people recognize the other side of it. And I would, and no matter what I say to them, that full story doesn't always come through, or people aren't able to receive it because we like the glitz and the glamour, and we don't I think sometimes when we see people's stories, we don't understand all the work that it takes to get there. So I definitely got burnt out, and I also just from some of the work I do, I needed something different. I experienced some things in my community, and I just recognized like this is not where I can live anymore. And when I looked around the U.S., I was like, I don't see anywhere else where I want to live too. And so, in this season of my life, in this chapter of my life, in this moment of my life, my peace, my joy is my number one priority and anchored in my faith. And so what Spirit said to me, what God said to me is go run after that. And so and I literally got in my car and I drove, with a lot of planning, but I got in my car and I drove to Mexico. Like that's what running after creating your peace is. And so I'm here, creating that. Like it feels amazing here. It feels good. So like for me right now, I love home, but home is not a place that gives me peace.
Mm. Now, when you talk about home, though, just hearing all that you've shared so far from your childhood experiences to, your young adult life, within the Peace Corps, being a nonprofit founder and all that is involved with that. When you say home, though, is home really a place or is home what you make it?
No,
And it's
not
home the people you choose to surround yourself with, and as opposed to being a building. Like, so what would you say is home for you right now?
home is love to me. Home is that like some place where you feel grounded, where you feel anchored, where you feel secure, where you feel safe, where you feel accepted as all of who you are, where you can show up in your truth and sort of thrive. Um, so that to your point can be people, that can be places. Um, places, whether it's a building and or like a city. So like my house in DC is my home. My house gives me a hug. There is intentional colors on the walls and murals and etc. that when I walk in there, even with all of my stuff stripped off the walls now and a lot of my personal effects gone from my home, it is still the energy of my home is still there. The city does not, it is my birthplace, but it doesn't feel like a home to me now because the peace isn't there. So like South Africa, Rustenburg, King is home to me. Merida is now home to me. DC also is home to me because of the people. Like there's nothing like just going in the grocery store and being like, I went to high school with you. How you doing, sis? You know, those kind of experiences. So that's what makes DC still home. And so in a different way than sort of the city itself. But yeah, it's again the love, the safety, the ability to be you. And like I think there's nothing better than like being in a place where people know you. So like in South Africa, even like I may be a foreigner, but I know there are kids there that I remember you when you were 3 and look at you now, like because I've been there for so long. And that's partly like it's not my birthplace. It's not I'm not nationally a resident, but it's home.
I love that. I know that you are a person that has like a bunch of amazing quotes, and I can't let you leave this conversation without sharing a quote of one of your favorite quotes that you feel maybe summarizes a bit of what we've talked about today, or something that folks can, maybe a book that you would recommend, maybe a favorite quote, but something that you can leave our audience with that gives us a sense of that distinctness of who Meisha is.
Can I do a quote in a book?
Go for it, girl.
Book, The Alchemist, by far. I've read it 3 times. I remember the magical man that gave it to me. It became my brother's favorite book, and we actually buried him with it. So like The Alchemist by far, if you have not read it, please do so. And if you read it years ago, pick it up again. It'll speak to you in a different way. I think a quote, and this is a quote from me, that I think that I think captures our whole conversation. And I would like to live with people. And it's something I've been saying a lot lately, but like, I just want people to know I didn't wake up like this. I worked at this. Like, I know, like, you know, Beyonce's like, you know, one of those things from a Beyonce song is I woke up like this. It takes work. Like, but I say that again because like so many people, and I'm honored and humbled to be perceived this way. So many people are like, I'm inspired by you, or I see this in you, or you're doing this and you're doing that. And like, I hope and like, you know, you see and you hear in this podcast, my genesis. And you see that like, I didn't just wake up and get in a car and drive to Mexico. Like it took me as a, you know, a recent college graduate being courageous enough to move to Atlanta on my own. It took me getting on that airplane and, you know, and serving as a Peace Corps volunteer. It took the 2 years every day of committing to still be here, even though there were days that really, really sucked and I got really, really frustrated. You know, it took, you know, me having the courage to quit a job to pursue quit my good 6-figure corporate job that I got to, you know, invested in getting an MBA for, like quitting that because I knew I wanted something else for myself, and being willing to like serve again as a Peace Corps volunteer and only make $5 a day because I knew that God had something else in store for me, and that I was willing to just sit for a little while and be quiet and learn and serve at the same time. So it took all of those things and so much more. It took having a praying mom and the faith that they've instilled, all of that to then live the life that I'm living now. And this is just the beginning. This is just my good. This ain't my great, y'all. But all that to say, whatever your good and your great is, it is available to you. It is available to you. Your life is just one big white canvas. Like I am living out the decisions that I made a couple weeks ago, a couple months ago, a couple years ago. So go ahead, take that white canvas, paint it, paint the picture, paint it big, paint it even bigger than what you thought was big. And then every day, make one small decision that gets you closer to living into that picture. And then the next day, make another, and then the next day, make another. And one day, you will wake up and you will realize that you were living out the dream, that really big dream that you had a few years ago.
Let's just drop the mic now. Thank you, Meisha. That was powerful and that was very, very well said. If anyone wants to learn more about your journey in Mexico, wants to learn more about I Am We Are, and wants to learn more about you, how can they connect with you?
Can I just before I do that, can I just say thank you for your heart that you bring to everything that you do? Like, I've done a lot of podcasts. I've also just, been interviewed a fair amount, and like just the questions you ask, like, thank you for allowing me that moment of introspection and allowing me to pull from like my soul and from my true beingness, and not, just give surface. So thank you for that. And thank you for allowing me this moment to reflect some of those lessons learned to others. So I appreciate you. I appreciate you. If you want to stay in contact with me personally, my Instagram, I am about to be off the socials, but personally, my Instagram is Meisha, Meisha Lerato, Lerato. I'll always have a presence. I may just not be on there as much. I'll interact every once in a while because peace is the focus again. But I Am We Are. It's IamWeAreYouth.org, and I Am We Are Youth is the same for all of our social handles. Like, don't go for me, go to learn the stories of these young people that are fabulous and have so many goals and dreams in the world, and be there. Like, please go hear their stories and invest in their futures. They would appreciate it, and I would appreciate it too.
Thank you so much, Meisha, for this conversation. It has left my heart full. This is probably one of the most impactful conversations I think we've had so far. And I really appreciate your taking the time to just share of your light and just the blessings that the Lord has blessed you with, because you are blessing so many with that. So thank you, my dear. And I know that there's going to be a part 2 to this conversation sometime.
All right. I appreciate it. I'm always here. Yes. Praise God. Because it is all God. In me, it's all God. And it's all, thank you. Thank you.
All right. Thank you.